your busy day to join us today to partake a little bit of the sweet nectar of Krishna Katha. We will first start, we're going to start with a few prayers, as we always do. Any auspicious work is started by seeking the blessings of Guru Parampara and the Vaishnavas, and we do that by doing our Mangalacharan prayers. So we will start with that. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Are you going to move, Param? Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandehaham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I first want to express my gratitude to my Shiksha Guru, who is very dear to my heart, His Grace Shivas Pandit Prabhu, who has tolerated and guided me over the past decade and brought me this close to spiritual knowledge that I may be able to share it with others. I seek his blessings before I start this class. And if there's any qualification, then it is his blessings, which are my only strength and support. So we will do the Jai Radha Mata prayers because it's part of our procedure. And after that, we will start with a few select verses on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita today. So we'll start with the Jai Radha Mata. Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari. Today, we're going to be talking from the Bhagavad Gita. For all those who are not aware of this sacred text, the Bhagavad Gita is also called the Gita Upanishads. It's one of the Upanishads, or the sacred texts of ancient India. And it is a record of a conversation that happened between Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Arjuna, who is his dear friend and devotee. This spiritually enlightening conversation that happened about 5,000 years ago is still as valid and relevant today as it was at the time when it happened. In our internet-based society, we still have the same problems and challenges that Arjuna faced, and the solutions that are given in the Bhagavad Gita make as much sense today as it did for him in the battlefield of Kurukshetra 5,000 years ago. Arjuna was at a crucial time in his life, and he found himself at crossroads, struggling to do what was expected of him versus what he felt was the right thing to do. This conversation takes us, the readers, through his challenges and struggles, and in a way helps us revisit and reinvestigate the basic tenets on which our own personal lives are built. The Bhagavad Gita covers 5 basic concepts. It talks about who we are, the Jiva. It talks about who is the Lord, Ishvara. It tells us details about what is material nature, Prakriti. And it also tells us the impact of time, or Kala. And bringing it all together, it gives us a 5th one, karma, or the effect of our actions. These questions and answers that Arjuna asks Krishna and Krishna responds, they lead us in a process where slowly we disentangle ourselves from the web of material existence that we have wrapped around us. And in a way, we start to walk towards a path of deeper and more real understanding of our true and eternal selves. It helps us to get back to our real home, the place where we truly belong. When we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, there are some things that we have to remember. The Bhagavad Gita is not just a book. The Bhagavad Gita is a process. It is a journey. When we read a book, we just take the story, we listen to it, and we say, we're done. But the Gita is not a story. The Gita is an instruction manual. And when we read an instruction manual, it's supposed to be dry and totally boring. But the Gita is none of that. The Gita challenges us every step of the way to ask questions, to further investigate, and to really try to understand what is it that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is trying to tell us. Without adding our personal realizations to the study of the Bhagavad Gita, it is inadequate, and we will not be able to grasp what the book is trying to give us. Let me give you a personal example of how the Gita affects us in a very realistic way, and how our personal realizations build on the fundamentals and foundation that the book is giving us. I turned 40 a few years ago, and then suddenly I realized my energy levels were not what they used to be. My body wouldn't bounce back the way it used to. There were new aches and pains, and I was just thinking to myself, this doesn't feel like my body. And suddenly I remember the verse in Bhagavad Gita 2:13, which beautifully tells us, Dehinosmin yata deho, which means this is just one of the many bodies you're going to be passing through. From birth to childhood to boyhood to youth to old age, you're going to be transferring into different shapes and sizes. And maybe this is a new one. Thinking about that made me stop and realize a few very important things on my journey. 1, I'm running out of time. If I've switched a body, I've lost some time. And 2, if this is not the body I had before, then certainly it's on the declining edge, which means I need to take better care of what I've been given, because I may not be having even this level of energy and strength for the coming years. These realizations that happen to us as we live our lives make the Gita more personal. They bring it closer to our hearts and make it relevant to our lives. Does anyone here have a realization that they had this week from the Gita? Something that connected them to their day-to-day functioning, where they felt, oh, he's right. This is how life is. Do you think anyone wants to share? Okay, if you think of something, then you can put it in the chat and we can pull it up. Swika, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I can share. So Recently, I've just like not been feeling too good, and I've been having some like digestive and breathing problems, and it's been going on for a while. And then, I was like thinking, why hasn't this solved? It's been so long. I just want to feel a little better. Um, and then I was just kind of flipping through the Gita and just like reading some of the basic verses, and I came upon the verse where Krishna says, "Oh, if you're my devotee, I'll preserve what you have and carry what you lack." And then I just thought, and then it just connected with me because I felt that, if I pray to Krishna, like Krishna is perfectly planning out my life, and he is the fire of digestion in me. So if I pray to him, then like it should all be fine.
Do you feel that this kind of realization and understanding brings you closer to the Gita?
Yeah, definitely, because then you can see it applied in your life. You realize that what it's saying is true and is practical.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that, because the most challenging part of sharing is that we have to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable about what we're giving. And when we do that, then like Maharaj says, sharing is caring. We build communities, we build understanding, and we build bonds. So let's get on to what I was covering. So as we noticed, the Gita is not just a book. It's much more than that. And if we want to start this journey, then we have to be able to take it and apply it in our lives. This journey of the Gita we're going to take today is a magical one. I do not know if I can give you as much insight into it as somebody else could, a more senior devotee, but I'm going to try, because all the Gita asks from us is the effort, and it will reveal itself. So let's see what we can learn from the Gita today. We will be starting our journey on the pages of the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, and it's verse 54. So before we start this verse, where we are in the midst of a conversation. We'll always be in the midst of a conversation when we pull anything out of the Bhagavad Gita. But when in the midst of this conversation, we're at a slight turning point. And here in chapter 2, we have the contents of the Gita summarized. That is the title of the chapter. And in this chapter, we have reached a certain point in the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. So let's look at where we've come. Initially, Arjuna has had this problem of not being able to fight. He doesn't want to fight. He doesn't find any logical reason to fight, and he's refusing. And Krishna is trying to convince him by telling him that he's got it all wrong. He really hasn't applied the right kind of logic, the right kind of intelligence to his thinking. He's explained to him that through analytical study, one can understand that the soul and the body are not one and the same. You may kill the body, but the soul, being eternal and indestructible, cannot be killed. And there is no way to save this body for eternity, because there is no way to keep the body from being destroyed, and there's no way to destroy the soul. So Krishna asks Arjuna, why do you lament? The soul is not dying, so whom are you killing? If, in a different way of approach, you feel that the soul dies every time with the body and then comes back again in a new body, then too, says Krishna, you have nothing to fear, because even in that case, the cycle just continues. If you have deprived the soul of the body now, it is only going to get a new, fresh body in its next reappearance or transmigration. So where is there any reason to lament? But consider this, that if you have not done your duty as a warrior, and you do not follow your dharma, which is to fight, then you will certainly gather infamy for your behavior. So at this point, he is trying to explain to Arjuna that there are very many reasons why you should fight. And one is the process by which he's explaining to him. Sometimes we try to explain to a child that this is why we have to do something. This is the process, this is the science. Understand the science so you can understand what we have to do. So there's another way of explaining this. Krishna says, you can work with understanding, and this understanding arises from analytical study. But you can also work with faith. And this faith arises from your understanding of your eternal constitutional position as a servitor of the Lord. And by such service that you do, you will be freed from all results of work and activities. Such a person who serves the Lord in such a manner is a person fixed in transcendence, and he does not acquire any karma in the work that he does. Arjuna is curious and wants to find out Exactly what are the qualities of such a person? And that's where we stop, at a point of understanding. Here's the question. Arjuna Vacha Sthitaprajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhaseta kim masita vrajeta kim. Arjuna Vacha, Arjuna said, Sita Prajnasya, of one who is situated in fixed Krishna consciousness. Ka, what? Bhasha, language. Samadhistasya, of one situated in trance. Keshava, O Krishna. Sthitadhi, one fixed in Krishna consciousness. Kim, what? Prabhaseta, speaks. Kim, how? Asita, does remain. Vrajeta, walks. Kim, how? In translation, Srila Prabhupada gives us this. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? Let's look at Srila Prabhupada's amazing purport. Srila Prabhupada says, as there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly, one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature: talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms, so a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks. Because speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak. And certainly, a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna-conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow, as stated below. Srila Prabhupada says this last sentence, as stated below, to let us know that there is more conversation to come, in which Krishna will be explaining to us what are all the symptoms of a person who is situated in transcendence. Srila Prabhupada in this purport talks about one very specific point. He says, as long as we keep our mouths shut, nobody can know if we are smart or we are a fool. And that really applies to a lot of things in our life. I've noticed that speaking is not as easy a process as we think. We open our mouth and words come out. But there is an impact of the words that come out, not just on others, but also on ourselves. So speech is certainly something we should focus on and look at more closely in this purport. But let's get back to the questions that Arjuna placed. Why is Arjuna interested in knowing about a person of such consciousness? What is the importance of asking this question? Does anyone have any idea why he wants to know? Krishna says, such is a person who will gather, he's like a rock that rolls. He gathers no moss, but he doesn't do anything for himself. All his service is for the Lord. And he says, well, what kind of a person is he? What is his language? What is his speech? What is his behavior? Why does Arjuna want to know? Does anyone have any idea?
Reasons. Go ahead, Balram.
No, please, Mataji, go ahead.
We could come off the text.
Yeah. I'd like to hear from you, Balram. Go ahead.
I was just saying that I was thinking like 2 reasons why you would want to know what such a person looks like or how he talks, etc., would be that you can see an example of what you want to go for, what you want to be, and at the same time, it's also nice that you can recognize someone, so you can learn from them and learn about how to get to their point. So I think those are 2 reasons why it would be important to know about this.
Very nice, very nice. Sunita Mataji tells us, so that he can follow and find a solution to his condition. Yes, of course. Arjuna is now in what we call kashmakash. He's in a challenged position. He's not quite sure where he's headed. And being curious is one of the very important ways to solve a problem. If we're not interested in finding a solution, then we will not have the curiosity to learn. And here he's trying to gather as much information as he can. And like Balram said, if you want to know something, you need to find out more about it, right? For example, if you want to behave like the Queen of England, you can't just start behaving in whatever manner you like and say, this is how the Queen behaves. No, the Queen has a very specific way of walking, talking, sitting, interacting. And unless we take time to understand and watch and observe very closely, we cannot gather the essence of what it is to be a queen. And the same way, here is Arjuna trying to gather the essence of what it means to be a person who is fixed in transcendence. He would have to observe and learn from their behavior. I remember that Srila Prabhupada had a quote once that he said that about association, but it applies here too. He said, if you wish to be a drunkard, be in the association of drunkards. They will teach you how to behave. And I feel that that really applies even in this context. The whole thing is to watch and learn. And here, what he's trying to do is gather information. So let's look into what are the questions that Arjuna has asked and how they apply to this concept of gathering information about a person in transcendence. First, Arjuna asks an important question. He says, how does a person speak? Srila Prabhupada again highlights in his purport the importance of speech. So let's look into that and see, why is speech so important? I was thinking about it when I was preparing for this, and I was thinking, why is speech so important? Don't we have this adage that tells us that actions speak louder than words? It's what you do that counts, not just what you say. So why then is Srila Prabhupada focusing on speech so much? I may say something, but it's my actions that define how I behave, right? Does anyone have an answer? No? No one wants to try? Okay, well, we can look into this. Well,
what you speak will become your actions slowly in due course of time.
Very nice, Prabhu. Yes, speech has an impact. It has an impact not just on the people around us, but also on ourselves. As we see, as we go on with other references in Shastra, we will understand better why speech is such an important tool and it should not be misused. So let's look at first what Srila Rupa Goswami, who's an eminent acharya in our sampradaya, has to say about speech. He left us this wonderful book called The Nectar of Instruction, the Upadeshamrita. And in that, the first instruction and the first part of that first instruction talks about speech. It says, Vachu Vegam. The tongue has to be controlled. Why is he specifying the tongue? Because he says, and Prabhupada explains further, the tongue is one of the most difficult senses to control because it just carries us away. Everyone who can speak loves to speak. There will be very few rare exceptions to that case. And I would bet that almost all of us love to hear the sound of our own voice. Look at me. So there's something about talking that we all love to do. But I've noticed in my life that talking's got me into more trouble than it's worth. Have you ever noticed how we start talking and then we end up in a place we don't want to be? And there's no backtracking because whatever came out of our mouth came out. And there's no way to just shovel it up, pick it up, and put it in a bag and disappear. Words have consequence. Words have value. And using those words wisely is one of the main symptoms of a person who is fixed in Krishna consciousness. When it comes to the company of friends and colleagues, we tend to speak on topics of a more mundane nature. We talk about the weather, your health, your financial status, your job details, everything else, including your colleagues and what they were up to today. These topics are all considered mundane topics. They do not really benefit us. Srila Prabhupada explains to us that the true topic that is worth the use of our power of speech is the one that relates to the glorification of the Lord and the recounting of his pastimes. Prabhupada explains, if one can control the urges of the tongue, he is then immediately capable of elevating himself in Krishna consciousness. Why is that so important? The power of speech affects the way we think. The power of speech affects our thoughts, and the power of our thoughts affects our lives. This is very well understood, even in other societies. When I was searching for quotes to put out here, I found two beautiful quotes from very different people. One is from Elder Thaddeus of Vitovnica, which is in Serbia, and he says, "Our thoughts determine our lives." Marcus Aurelius, who is another Roman king, he has to say that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. I was surprised to see that this seems to be a common thread in a lot of cultures. Speech is valued, and the way we speak is given a lot of importance. But Arjuna doesn't just ask about speech. He asks about the language of a person who is situated in transcendence. What is language? The Oxford Dictionary explains language as a system of communication in speech and writing, which is used by people of a certain region, country, or area. What is language? Language is a way of representing ourselves, written and verbal, right? So how does a person who is self-realized express himself? When I looked into this, I realized that there are a lot of shastra that connect us to this concept. A self-realized soul doesn't usually unnecessarily speak, because what we have to speak on most times is just Gramya Katha, and it's not tasty or enjoyable or beneficial to him. But when you start talking about Krishna Katha, then that person will talk in great depth and in conviction, and with conviction, spreading compassion and love of God wherever he goes. How am I able to say that? Where did I find that? It is in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, verse 15, where we are told what is austerity of speech. Here in Bhagavad Gita 17:15, we hear, "Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyay abhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate." Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. It seems to define how a person in transcendence would communicate. It also reminded me of an acronym I found that made a lot of sense to me, and I had it put up on my board for quite a while. It is THINK, T-H-I-N-K. Think before you speak. And what is the think? T, is what you say true? H, is what you say helpful? I, is what you have to say inspiring? N, is what you have to say necessary? And K, is what you have to say kind. I find this very closely related to the verse in Bhagavad Gita 17:15, because it makes us stop to ask ourselves, am I being truthful? Does what I have to say benefit the other person? Am I going to hurt them by what I have to say? Am I agitating them unnecessarily? Does what I have to say please the person receiving the message? When we follow these rules, in many ways, we avoid the problem that we discussed before, where we say something and then we can't take it back and we're stuck in a road we don't want to travel. I call it the foot and mouth disease, and I have been there too many times. And yet, Srila Prabhupada explains to us that this control of your tongue is the most important first step in Krishna consciousness. If we can learn to control the tongue, then all other things will follow. And that is what he says in the first one, in the first 254 that we covered. It's interesting that in this verse, along the end, it says, also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. It reminded me of the 10 offenses, where in the end he says, and also it is an offense to inattentively chant. Why is this little attachment attached there? How does reading scriptures have anything to do with austerity of speech? Does anyone have any idea? Is there any relationship between reading scriptures? Because all the other points in that shloka are about speaking, but this is about reading, or basically reciting the Vedas. Why is that important when it comes to our speech? Anyone wants to make a try?
Because the mind instead wants to recite Bollywood songs and all kinds of nonsense. So if you try to sit down and recite the scriptures, mind wants to go here and there. You want to get up from that place. You think of 600 other things to do, then recite the Shastras.
Yes.
Later on, you develop a taste, and then you want to recite nothing else than the Shastras.
Very true. But there's also another point that I found. So I really enjoyed researching for this because I could find so much Shastra. And I realized that the Bhagavad Gita is a solution in itself. All you need is the Gita. You need to know where to look though. So from the Gita, we do travel a little bit to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And from the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can find a little more detail on this concept. Why is it such an important component of austerity of speech? Srimad Bhagavatam 1:2-18 explains this to us in the following verse. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. The Gita Mahatmya, in its verse, also talks and extols the virtues of reading the Bhagavad Gita. It talks about how, just as you take a dip in the Ganges and it washes away your sin, a dip into the luxurious verses of the Bhagavad Gita washes away all the dirt of material life. There is much more in the Gita Mahatmya that describes the benefit of reading the Bhagavad Gita. And I would suggest if you've never read it, then it's certainly something you should take a look at. But the question is, how is it that by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to a pure devotee, all the troublesome things in the heart are completely destroyed? It is because by reading regular recitation of the Shastras, we are able to serve the Lord, and in service comes mercy. If we start our service, then all other processes begin. And by regular attendance, we slowly wash away the dirt in our heart and we cleanse ourselves by listening to Krishna Katha. It doesn't have to be that you're sitting in a class and hearing what somebody else is saying. It will also be you reading from Srila Prabhupada's books. Because in a way, when you're reading, Srila Prabhupada is lecturing or preaching to you. How do we apply this concept? So now we have something we can apply. One was speech. So the challenge is in controlling our speech. And how do we control that? We be observant of how we talk, be kind, be truthful, be aware of what we are saying. Is it benefiting the person who's receiving it? Is it pleasing to them? Is it unnecessarily upsetting them? What kind of speech are we having? And then we look at what are the sounds are we adding to our life on a daily basis? Are we putting into our ears, Karna Randhrena, are we putting into our ears the right sounds? And we do that by reciting regular Vedic scriptures. Vaisheshika Maharaj has two things that he recommends when it comes to daily scriptural reading. One is Chad, chapter a day, where he recommends that you just read one chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day, and that will help you with your regular quota or sadhana of Vedic scriptures. Another is to track your reading by doing Be a Sage page by page. These are two things that help us. Chad helps us with reading the Bhagavad Gita, reciting the verses of the Bhagavad Gita. And Be a Sage page by page is a technique where we keep track of the number of pages we've read every day. And in that way, we set a goal to finish a certain scriptural book within a certain time frame. Both of these are great practical ways of applying this concept. The Lord gives us two other symptoms of a person in Krishna consciousness, fixed in Krishna consciousness. We did speech, and we talked about regular Krishna Katha. Along with that, there is another thing that he said, and that was to serve the spiritual master. We will not be covering that today because that is a completely whole topic. But yes, it is part of our cleansing procedure. And it's actually the only way to get the full squeezed juice of spiritual knowledge. Because a guru is able to guide us and bring us where we cannot go. He has a deeper and more relevant understanding. And finding a guru is one of the main processes in Krishna consciousness. We start there. Finding a guru, serving him with humility, asking questions. In this process, we come towards a point where through the guru's mercy and through Krishna's mercy, we obtain a love, we obtain the bij, the Bhakti Lata bij. And from that, our process of devotional service starts. But here we are looking at what are the symptoms of a person fixed in transcendence. Krishna, in the chapter ahead, talks about various symptoms of a person fixed in transcendence. We're going to stick to just two major symptoms because it's really a long chapter, and I was thinking that we should cover something that connects to what we've been reading so far. One point that he talks about is a person who's fixed in Krishna consciousness gives up his desire for sense gratification. He is satisfied in his position as an eternal servant of the Lord. Another thing that a person who's fixed in transcendence does is that he remains undisturbed by the threefold miseries and free from attachment, fear, and anger. Let's look at the first one. The first one says, he gives up all desire for sense gratification, which means he basically doesn't look to enjoy himself by connecting to the material world around him. How does someone give up sense gratification? Does anyone have any idea? How do I stop being attracted to the variegatedness of the material world around me? All these wonderful, beautiful, different, enjoyable things around me that constantly call my name every day. And here Krishna says, a person who is fixed, he has no such problem. He has given up his desire for these things. How is it that he does that? Does anyone have any idea? What would be the first step?
He develops a better desire.
Yes, he develops a better desire. Yes. Is there anything else?
Through chanting and practice.
Through chanting and practice. Yes. Let's look at what I could gather. Giving up sense gratification is not very easy. The Gita tells us in the same chapter, in verse 60, that the senses are so strong that it is capable of dragging even an advanced yogi down and holding him away from what he wants to achieve. In that verse, we are brought to the point of understanding the story of sage or Rishi Vishwamitra and Menaka. Now, Rishi Vishwamitra is working really hard. He's put all his energy into controlling his senses, and he has a plan. He wants to become a Brahma Rishi, and he's on that way. He's focused, he's meditating. All he has to do is hear and see the beautiful form of his Apsara. And he loses all control of his senses. And for quite a few years, he completely deviates from his path. Till, by the grace of God, at some point he realizes, he wakes up like from a dream and realizes, what have I been doing? When a great Rishi like Vishwamitra, who's been meditating for very many years, can be just sidetracked from his main focus, like a flower that's flying in the breath of the wind. What are we? This verse actually gives us very little hope. It says there is no way that you can control your senses. And yet Krishna gives us a very easy and simple solution. After saying this, Krishna also explains that there is one easy way to control your senses, and that is by taking to devotional service. When a person takes to devotional service, automatically all such desires are subdued. How does that happen? Krishna says, it happens by the mercy of the Lord. By you choosing to take the path of Krishna consciousness, by you putting a serious effort and showing a sincere desire to make that change, even though you know that the hurdle is too high for you to cross and the path is too challenging. The fact that you showed intention and will pleases the Lord. And with his mercy, you will be able to cross a barrier that you could not cross before. How do we know that this will happen? How would we know that automatically our desires will subside? There's a famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12. It says, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarve gune tattva samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahatguna manorathena sati bhavato vahi. If we look at the translation, it says, all the demigods and their exalted qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material activities has no good qualities, even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or the honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives. He must be driven by his own mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? Does it really mean that if I've been taking very good care of my family and I've been doing all my jobs just right, I've taken care of my family, I'm doing charity, I'm running a business, I've done everything right in my life. Does it not count? It counts. But it doesn't count towards what we want, the automatic subdual of material desires. If you wish to subdue your material desires, what you really need is to be able to do devotional service. Because a person who engages tan, man, dhan, his body, his mind, and his will. So we say body, mind, and words. He engages all this in the service of Sri Hari. Then for such a person, automatically in his body becomes manifest the demigods in all exalted qualities. So he is a wonderfully good person, and all good qualities reside in him. But that is not automatic for someone who is doing what we call material, who's doing materially beneficial activities. For him, this benefit never arises. Actually, the Srimad Bhagavatam questions if there is any good quality in him, because what is the use of a good quality that does not serve the Lord? This also reminded me of the challenges of how, as a small little jiva in this material world, we get thrashed about by material nature and our senses. It's like a football game in which we are the ball, and both of them are having a really good time. In CC Madhya 21:16, there is a verse that I really, really like because it expresses our frustration very nicely. It goes, Kamadhinam katina katida palita durnideshas Tesham jata mayina karuna na krapa na pashantihi utsrijeta matayadupate sampratam labha buddhis vamayata sharanam abhayam mam niyum swatmadasye. Here's the devotee who's speaking to the Lord, and he says, "Oh my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of my lusty desires. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I ever desired to give them up. Oh my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, recently, however," yes, I was wrong. It is not 22:16. It would be, Balram, did you find the verse? Okay, got it wrong. So it says,
Please.
It says, "Oh my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them all up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and now I come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me." The frustration of a devotee who has been in the material world so long and been beaten down from both sides by all these kleshas and all these challenges. Maharaj talks about how a person gets to a point where he says, no mas, no more. I can take it no more. And sometimes we ask ourselves, why are these challenges so very overwhelming? Why am I being pushed to the wall and held tight, pinned tight? This verse reminds us that in any situation like that, there is the hand of God trying to teach us a lesson. Maybe there's something we need to let go. Maybe there's something we need to learn. This devotee, in such a surrendered mood, is asking the Lord, for the one thing that Srila Prabhupada explains helps us overcome our material desires. He's asking the Lord for mercy. He's asking Him to help him and protect him. He says, I have surrendered myself at your fearless lotus feet, because at the lotus feet of Guru and Krishna, there is no fear. And he says, now you engage me in your personal service. Give me devotional service. And in that process, please save me. When someone takes to devotional service, as we just read, automatically all such desires are subdued by the mercy of the Lord. Does that mean that the moment I take to devotional service, I have no more desires? I am free? Do you think that's what happens? Do you think it's just going to go away? I was thinking that it should be like, an instant miracle cure. I choose to serve Krishna, I've surrendered, and now I have no more desire. What do you think? Do you think that's how it works, or is there a different process?
Can you repeat your question?
Well, Srila Prabhupada explains that when we take to devotional service, automatically all these material desires will get completely subdued. My question is, does it happen like that, or does it take time?
It takes a lot of time.
Why? Krishna can just do that. Why should it take so much time?
Because we have lifetimes of karma and attachment to the material world, and it's not going to disappear just like that. It takes practice and chanting to wipe your heart and make it clean. So, yeah.
Yeah, Chitodarpanamarjanam, it's a slow process where we start cleansing ourselves, and slowly the mirror of the heart starts to reflect the right images. There is no instant miracle cure. So, can someone remember a verse? Let me give you a clue. I don't want to give the verse away, but the clue is, what is the verse that talks about this process, this gradual process of going from lower to higher? We go from lower to higher. And in that way, we overcome these attractions to the sense, to things that give us sense gratification. What is that one verse that we always do?
I remember the last words of that. It's like Shraddha Bhakti Anukramishati. The order it says.
That's true, but I was looking more into, when we look for sense gratification, it's more about a taste. We've developed a certain taste, and then we have to learn to let it go. But it doesn't go on its own. It only goes when
Vishaya vinivartante.
Laharasya dehina.
You can continue.
Param drishtva nivartate. Which means a lower taste can only be conquered by developing a higher taste. And the higher taste, which is actually the name of one of our beautiful books, is this taste for serving Krishna. It's a taste for devotional service. When we start devotional service, automatically the fact that we have a higher taste overcomes our lower taste, and it's a process of correction. The tastes that we've developed are habits that have been built over lifetimes of constant, repeated affirmations. We do something, we enjoy, we may suffer, but we come back and do it again. And the mind has built all these vasanas over lifetimes, and they're not that easy to remove. And Krishna wants us to put our effort. He doesn't want it to be that he just came, picked us up, and took us away. He will when the time is right. Now he wants to see how interested are we in really going home? How committed are we? How strong is our devotion? How much do we really want it? And this process of cleansing our heart and working through our anarthas and developing a higher taste is our way of telling Krishna that, yes, Krishna, I'm ready to make that change. And I'm going to work as hard as it takes, as hard as it gets, to get from here to there, to the point where when I stretch my hand out, you come and grab me and pull me out of this ocean of intolerable suffering. So let's look at the other symptom. We did the first symptom, and that was speech. So a person who has a Sthitadhira Muni, a person in Samadhi, a person who is fixed in Krishna consciousness, he has the ability to speak in a certain manner. He speaks words that are kind. He speaks words that are true. He speaks words that are beneficial, pleasing, and that do not agitate. He constantly does Krishna Katha. That is his utmost. That is what attracts him most, and that is his essential. That is the center of his speech. It's always about Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna Leela, details of Krishna, and the Shastra. That's where he stays. The language of a person who does this becomes very refined, and at a point, it starts to attract the attention of others. Developing our speech is one way to become like a person who's fixed in Krishna consciousness. The second thing we noticed was a person who is fixed in Krishna consciousness slowly and gradually develops the strength to resist and then give up his desire for sense gratification. He stays satisfied in his position as the eternal servant of the Lord. That's all he wants. He just does not want anything for himself. A side effect of this is that he becomes undisturbed by the threefold material miseries. And he is free from three things: attachment, fear, and anger. Now, how does that happen? Let's take a look. The first point was that he is he's undisturbed by the threefold miseries. What are the threefold miseries? Adhyatmika, Adibhautika, and Adidaivika. The Adhyatmika is a misery that comes from the body and mind. The Adibhautika comes from that which is inflicted by other living entities upon us. And Adidaivika would be the effect of natural disturbances that affect most of us. So why is a devotee in Krishna consciousness, who's fixed in Krishna consciousness, undisturbed by these threefold miseries? Does it happen that these difficulties do not come to them? I mean, are you like in a cocoon where nothing affects you anymore? Is this the happily ever after that we're all looking for? I become Krishna conscious and then I'm free. I don't have to suffer. Do you think that is why he's undisturbed? Because it just doesn't affect him? Or is there another reason why we say that a devotee who is fixed is undisturbed by these threefold miseries? Anyone wants to take a guess?
I think it's not because it doesn't affect him, because the devotee is still living in the material world, which means that he is subject to these miseries regardless of whether he's a devotee or not. But I think the devotee has faith that Krishna loves him and Krishna wants the best for him, and Krishna is planning his life in a perfect way so that at the end of his life, he will go back to Krishna because he has that faith in him that this is only temporary. So that's why he's undisturbed.
So you're referring to the Tattenukampam verse, right? He tolerates. Tattenukampam susumikshamanam vinjan evatmakritam vipakam kikpapapurbir vididan namaste jivetayo muktipade sadayapa. So in that verse, it talks about how he tolerates all these difficulties, considering them to be caused of his own fault. There's nothing to do. And the Lord is always merciful. And in this process, by having this nature and this humility, he becomes eligible to enter the kingdom of God. And yes, you are very right. When a devotee faces these problems, what runs in his mind? What is his attitude? That defines how he faces them. Whether he's affected by them, he's disturbed by them, that he's able to remain calm and equipoised. Let's see what happens. When one's mind is fixed on the Lord and his service, no other material results can disturb him, for he attributes all of these things to the mercy of the Lord. When he is safe and prospering, he thinks, I do not deserve all of this, but the Lord has kindly given me this, and for this I am very grateful. When he is suffering, he thinks, I deserve so much more suffering for all my past sins, but Krishna, he is so merciful. He has only given me this much, and he has kept it to this extent more bearable for me. I am so deeply grateful. A devotee does not look at the pluses and minuses in his life as something that is attributable to him because of all these challenges and struggles that he's facing. No, he knows that having taken the shelter of the Lord, he is always guided by him. And whatever happens to him is always the mercy of the Lord. How does someone get this attitude? How does he get to this point where he's able to accept everything as the mercy of the Lord? It comes because having spent all this time in devotional service, developing that attitude, and with the realizations that he gains along the process, he comes to the understanding that when one is surrendered, the Lord does take care of him. And even though we cannot see the bigger picture, like a needle that is being passed in and out of a cloth while it is doing an embroidery design, the Lord is himself partaking. We are the needle, and the Lord is the one making the embroidery design. And though the needle may think that sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down and sometimes it comes back up, there is a pattern to the madness. And there is a picture that the Lord is trying to create. And in the end, when all is said and done, we will be able to see the final result. And that attitude is what makes it a devotee undisturbed by the threefold miseries. There's another point that Krishna brought up. Not only is he undisturbed by the threefold miseries, he is also free from three different things: attachment, fear, and anger. Let's look at these three things, because these three things are highlighted in this chapter as three things from which a devotee is able to detach himself or become free from. The first is attachment. Attachment means accepting things for one's sense gratification. Well, that makes sense, right? When a devotee doesn't want anything, why is he going to accept anything? But again, the question is, why does a devotee not want sense gratification? Let's get back to that point. For a devotee, once he has taken to the process of Krishna consciousness, he comes to a stage or a point at which he finally understands that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that everything is Vasudeva. Whatever he does, whatever he enjoys, whatever he does, whatever he gives, whatever he takes, everything is for the pleasure of the Lord. There's nothing other than the Lord. And when his desires become nothing but the Lord's desires, then he has nothing to look forward to for his own self. And he is not attached to things that make him happy or sad. There is no attachment to sense gratification. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:237 talks about fear. If he's not attached, he still should have some amount of fear, right? Bhayam dutiya vinivesha tatsyat ishad apetasya viparyato yayosmati tanmayayato buddha apati apajetam bhakyai kayesham guru devatatma. Fear arises within a living entity when he misidentifies himself as the material body because of absorption in external illusionary energy of the Lord. When the living entity turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and as his very life and soul. So many times in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we keep coming back to these basic points. When you talk about how we will overcome our sense desires, material desires, desire for sense gratification, how will we overcome our fear, anxieties, our attachments? It keeps coming back to two things: take to devotional service and do it under the guidance of a spiritual master. These two things go hand in hand, and when done together, they are indisputably the fastest and easiest way to overcome these obstacles. Just as for a devotee, Vasudeva is everything, and everything he does is for the Lord and not for himself. A person who is not a devotee does not see that. For him, everything is for himself, and he differentiates his needs and his personal preferences from those of the Lord. Fear arises when a person lives like that because he does not understand his natural position. He identifies himself with the material body, and therefore he becomes completely absorbed in Maya. And what does Maya do for us? It keeps us trapped, trying to tell us, keeps us within the four things that we always do. Prabhupada always tells us we're hunting, mating, defending, and eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And within that little sphere of living our little lives, everything that troubles us causes us fear. We fear for our life. We fear for the things we have gathered. We fear for the family and, the people we have around us. Fear is nothing but the feeling of not being able to protect what is yours. The moment you understand that nothing is really yours, what are you to fear? When everything you keep is for the service of the Lord, when everything you do is for the service of the Lord, when you have this very clear understanding that we are the eternal servitors of the Lord, and by taking care of the Lord and serving the Lord, we are automatically served, there is nothing to fear, because then Maya has no impact on you. And this illusion that you are this material body and you have these things that you need to protect and maintain and care for disappears. The Lord is our main protector, our only protector, and he takes care of his devotees. So where is the fear? An intentioned person should therefore engage unflinchingly in unalloyed devotional service for the Lord, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and his very life and soul. Anger is the third thing that a person who's fixed in Krishna consciousness does not have. Chapter 2, verse 62 talks about this. It says, Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangas teshu upajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodha abhijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. So, why am I just getting angry by wanting something? While contemplating the objects of the senses. So I'm looking at something. And when I look at something, I get attracted to it. When I get attracted to it, then I lust after, which means I want it. Why am I angry if I want something? Doesn't make sense, right? If I want something, I want something. Why anger? Does anyone know why anger is a natural consequence from lust?
Frustration develops when we can't get what we want.
The material world is a funny place. You cannot always get what you want. It's like this place where it has everything out there. You walk into a room where everything's on display and everything is available, but not one thing can you afford. So all you're doing is just window shopping. And after a point, when someone really wants something, window shopping is a very frustrating activity. And from that frustration of not getting what you want, anger arises. Anger arises when there are unmet or unfulfilled material desires and desires for sense gratification. But a realized soul has, through the Lord's mercy, overcome this powerful attraction to sense gratification and sense objects. And therefore, one who has overcome this by, developing a higher taste, by serving the Lord and obtaining his mercy, to him, there is no need for anger because he's not attracted. He doesn't want all these things. They are temporary and they really give him no joy. For him, the real joy is in serving Krishna. So for him, there is no requirement for anger. So if we say that a person who is fixed in transcendence is free from anger, what are the points that we're looking at? What helps him be free from anger? Can you guys recollect all the points that we covered? What frees him from anger?
When they realize that like the objects in the world that they think are theirs aren't actually theirs, but it's just there so that they can use it in service to Krishna, then they won't get so attached to those objects and then get angry.
Very nice. So only for Krishna, not for me. That's the first point. So he's not bothered. It's Krishna's. Second, why does he not want it? What's the second thing that we discussed?
Because he wants to please the senses of Krishna and not his own senses.
Yes, he develops a higher taste. This enjoyment just for himself it's a lower taste. It's very temporary. And it really is like Prabhupada explains, the camel chewing on the cactus, tasting its blood and saying, how sweet, very nice. But he's chewing himself. Or in a situation where, we think we're benefiting, but actually we're creating more problems for ourselves. A higher taste is what a devotee has. He understands by serving Krishna, he is in a way helping himself, because when we water the roots of the tree, all parts of the tree gain the benefit. And in that way, when we serve Krishna, everybody is benefited. There's a third point that we discussed. We didn't quite cover it here, but there's a third point, why a person is able to resist this lust, resist this attachment for material sense gratification, and that is detachment. When one serves the Lord, knowledge and detachment are automatically his. They come. And when one is detached from all these things, then there is no desire to have them anymore. So one is that he thinks, oh, it's not for me. It's for Krishna, not for me. He develops a higher taste. So he serves the Lord. And third is he develops detachment. He doesn't want anything to do with the material world. It doesn't feel like a place that gives him much joy. The only joy he derives here is in the service of the Lord and his devotees. So I think we still have, Balram, we still have 20 minutes, right?
Yes, Mati.
Okay. So I was going to wrap that up because I finished up with that. But I do have one more extra verse that I found very interesting. I wanted to share with you before we go into the conclusion. When I was looking about, this point of what are the symptoms of a person who is fixed in transcendence, Krishna talks in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 19, 20 to 24. It's a really long verse. And in that he lists all the activities that his pure devotees perform. He talks about it. Let me just read it to you. He says, firm faith in the blissful narration of my pastimes, constant chanting of my glories, unwavering attachment to ceremonial worship of me, praising me through beautiful hymns, great respect for my devotional service, offering obeisances with the entire body, performing first-class worship of my devotees, consciousness of me in all living entities, offering of ordinary bodily activities in my devotional service, use of words to describe my qualities, offering the mind to me, rejecting all material desires, giving up wealth for my devotional service, renouncing material sense gratification and happiness, and performing all desirable activities such as charity, sacrifice, chanting, vows, and austerities with the purpose of achieving me. These constitute actual religious principles by which those human beings who have actually surrendered themselves to me automatically develop love for me. What other purpose or goal could remain for my devotee? So in this verse, in this collection of verses that he's brought, he's talking about what are all the things that a devotee who's totally absorbed in Krishna consciousness would do. And if you look at it, a lot of these things are done by most devotees. We do follow the processes. And in this way, we get to think of Krishna, serve Krishna. We can do so many things. We can sing to him. We can do devotional service for him. We can read of his qualities and share it with others. We can appreciate the Paramatma in everybody. And then we can do charity in the service of the Lord. We can take vows like we do the Kartik Mas vows. We do our chanting. We take austerities like we fast on auspicious days. We do sacrifices. The biggest sacrifice is the Sankirtan Yajna that we do regularly every Saturday. And then we offer through our body, mind, and words, everything in devotional service. So he says, my devotees love to serve my devotees, to performing first-class worship of my devotees. They love to offer obeisances with their entire body. And they praise me through their hymns, and they give great respect through devotional service. I was thinking, that this is a very new verse, at least for me, because I've not had this come up many times. But it reminded me of a verse that we have said many, many times. And Vaisheshika Maharaj has brought it up many times in his lectures. And it talks about a certain devotee who does all this. And through that, he achieves great, great benefit. Can someone remember what that verse is? Yes, Srimad Bhagavatam 9:4-18-20. This is about Maharaj Ambarish and how he did all this. And when did he do all this? He did this centuries, decades, centuries, a long time ago. And it was valid then and it is valid now. Devotional service doesn't have an expiry date. It doesn't have a validity date. It's not like it worked for him and won't work for us. It's not like it worked for us, but it won't work for my grandchildren. Devotional service is eternal. It is our Sanatana Dharma. Our service to the Lord is our eternal constitutional position, where we are the servitors of the Lord, and He appreciates and relishes our service. What, Balram, if you could scroll down to the purport, to the translation. What Maharaj Ambarish did is very simple, similar to what is being said in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto. The Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, when we read it, we could connect to a lot of those statements because we do it on a daily basis at home, in the temple, and with our congregational members. But here Maharaj Ambarish is focused on just doing service with his body and mind. He says, Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of Krishna, of Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, his ears in hearing words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulasi offered to the Lord. He engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasada. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, all his desires in serving the Lord, 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarisha never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service. In various engagements related to the Lord, this is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. Should I say any more? These two verses that we pulled out, one from Canto 11 and the other here from Canto 9, completely encompass everything that we've been trying to cover today. Devotee who is fixed in transcendence has the symptoms that are undeniably identifiable and recognizable. For them, everything is about Krishna. Their service is one single-minded and one purposed. It is not spread into various avenues. For them, body, mind, and soul, everything they do is in the service of the Lord. For them, there is no sense gratification because they have learned to develop a higher taste. They have learned to control their tongue. They have learned to commit themselves to steady devotional service. And in the process, they have earned the mercy of the Lord. Through all this, we realize, as we did, that this is the secret to steady intelligence. A steady intelligence comes by doing all these things, but it starts with devotional service. Taking to devotional service under the guidance of a spiritual master is a first step towards attaining a fixed transcendence. In conclusion, I wanted to say that here we see a self-realized soul who is able to stay focused and be one of mind in his practice in devotional service. Through his unmotivated, selfless service, he attains all good qualities and overcomes all challenges by obtaining the mercy of the Supreme Lord and slowly rising above his lower modes and controlling the otherwise uncontrollable, unconquerable senses. By reading about the behavior and qualities of such souls, we too can understand the process by which we can attain the same level of transcendence. In the Bhagavad Gita, just as Arjuna has had to go from frustration to surrender to slow evolving understanding and then to full clarity to finally gather the full message of the Lord. For us too, the understanding of the Bhagavad Gita is a process of transformation, from confusion and doubt to clarity and purpose. Every day, thousands and thousands of people are finding their way to a more fulfilling and meaningful life through the teachings of this wonderful book. I thank every one of you who took the time to attend this class and took on this very hot day a refreshing drink of Krishna Katha. I hope I have been of some service to you, and I wish for you all the recurring joy of enjoying more and more of the spiritual nectar by constantly taking a dip with regular readings into this sacred text. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If anyone has any questions or reflections, I'd be more than happy to take them at this point in time.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, welcome.
Thank you for the very enlivening class. There are some reflections from the ISV library. Shall I go ahead?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. One is from Kanta Devi Dasi Mataji. She says, power phrase, Bhagavad Gita is not a book, it is a process. Haribol?
Yes, Mataji. That was a realization for me. Because when I first took to Bhakti Shastri, I thought, yay, this is my chance to read the Bhagavad Gita. And then I gave my exam. I gave my exam on the first 6, and then I gave my exam on the remaining till the 18th chapter. And I thought, the day I sat for the exam, I thought, I'm so happy. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I'm just so happy because it was like a dream come true. I waited many, many years to read this text. Unfortunately for us, even though we are born in the land of, Bharatvarsh, and we are bestowed with much more than others can get, we do not have a clear understanding of our scriptural texts. When we go to read Bhagavad Gita, many places, the focus is only on the chanting of the slokas. Understanding the meaning and purpose of the book is a lot of times way beyond what we can get. And then there are also variations. So just reading the Bhagavad Gita was a great success for me. And then I realized when I started working with my kids that reading is not understanding. When you want to understand something, you have to come back and revisit it. It's like saying I spent 2 hours with Balram and I know him completely. There's no way I can say that. He's a complex individual with layers, and so is the Gita. The Lord and his words are one and the same. When we read the Lord's words, we are actually accessing the Lord himself. And just as the Lord is infinite, his instructions can be understood in not in different ways, in different layers. It will open itself and reveal itself as we keep visiting it more often. And on top of that, there's Srila Prabhupada, right there in the word, blood, sweat, and tears, all in these pages. He put his heart and soul into it. What better use of our time? Gita. There's a journey that I hope does not end, because it has been a wonderful journey so far. And I see more and more people joining, so the crowd's getting big. What is the other thing, Mataji?
It's from Rachana Mataji.
Mataji? Anything else?
Can you hear me, Mataji? Yeah. It's from Rachana Mataji. She says, Hare Krishna can relate to every word you are speaking. Thanks to Krishna for your understanding and compilations. Can you hear me, Mataji? Ribot?
Can you hear me clearly, Mataji? Because the internet was saying it's not stable.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, Mataji, I heard you. So, Mataji, whatever I have been able to transfer and bring across is just the mercy of my Shiksha Guru, his generosity and magnanimity when it comes to teaching the Bhagavad Gita and now the Srimad Bhagavatam that I'm learning from him is ISV renowned, maybe not world renowned, but everybody in ISV knows that he doesn't hold anything back. He's truly a river of mercy. And because I have been able to take a few mugs of it, I have been able to transfer a little bit on. That's all. So it all credit goes to him.
There is another one from Radha Venkat Prabhu. Thanks for bringing out the importance of reading scripture. Now I am even more motivated to go to the Saturday seminar.
Let me just having a little bit of trouble with the internet, I think. We'll figure this out. Yes. I was okay. Masi, could you repeat that? I was trying to open the page, but I couldn't get to it because your voice was breaking and I couldn't hear you.
It's a reflection from Radha Venkat Prabhu.
Radha Venkat Prabhu, yes.
Thanks for bringing out the importance of reading scripture. Now I am even more motivated to go to the Saturday seminar.
Yes, so am I. Because I would really like to know how I can stay connected on a daily basis. Life throws a lot of curveballs. I mean, for younger children like Balaram and Sweka, life's challenging enough. But as you get older, you know, like an experienced bowler, Maya will start throwing a lot of curveballs at you. They're not going to be straight shots anymore. And then you realize that despite your best intentions, you only manage to get a little bit done. And even that is by the mercy of the Lord and Guru, not by anything else that you've done yourself. So this resolve to go back and revisit the basics is really, really important, and something that Vaisheshika Maharaj reminds us again and again. Strengthen your basics, because when you take the time, when times are good and you have the bandwidth to add a little bit more to your sadhana, to attend a lecture, to go back and revisit the basics, that is the time to do it. Because when things get really challenging and Maya's throwing a curve ball and you're not quite sure if you're out yet, that's what's going to save us. Is that it, Martha?
Sorry?
Is that it?
Yeah, there is another one from Gandharvika Mataji. This analogy. Thanks for the wonderful explanation of anger. It shows our depth of our illusion and attachment. Of course, exalted souls like Hanuman can get angry for the right cause, but we are far away from that exalted position.
That is so true. It applies to all of us, because when I was reading about anger, it sounds so simple. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada, I think, you know, when I read Srila Prabhupada, I'm reminded of Sukhamukat Amritam Drava Samyutam, you know. Krishna is not actually making it easy for us when he sings the Gita. Krishna is a very exalted person, and he's talking to Arjuna, who's another exalted person. I don't think he was trying to make it easy for me, this specific jiva, especially the one stuck in the mire of Kali Yuga. But he did make sure that he sent Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada was able to, with his Guru's mercy, give us the essence in his purpose that simplified the Bhagavad Gita for us. Even though Krishna is speaking very clearly and straightforward, somehow our poor, pathetic Kali Yuga minds cannot grasp the understanding of what he's trying to say. But Srila Prabhupada, because he has got it and he has squeezed the essence, he's able to give it to us in a way where we can easily absorb and understand it. The Bhagavad Gita as it is truly a gem of a book. And it is even more valuable for us because Srila Prabhupada took the effort to give it to us. His purports make, like we say, when you pray to Lord Chaitanya, difficult things become easy. When you read the Gita through Srila Prabhupada, everything becomes so much more simpler and easy to understand. So even anger, for that matter, anger was something that, you know, it sounds so simple, but application is so very difficult. And anger is a very subtle emotion. I can understand if I'm angry because my neighbor has a Lexus and I don't have it. And that is a material association I get. But what about when I'm angry with my children because they're not following my instructions? What about when I'm angry with other relationships? Those are all subtler parts of anger that really require us to stop and think, you know. But it is very true that because of my interaction with other relationships that I have created, and because of that, I want things from them. I want something from my relationship. I want them to listen to me. I want them to follow my instruction. If they don't, then anger is a natural consequence because I am frustrated in my desire. So anger is by itself pretty challenging, Mataji, for me personally, because it takes a lot of time for me to transfer this simple understanding into my life and see how this, you know, association becomes lust, becomes anger, and to see where I went wrong. Thank you so much, Mataji.
There's one more from Kautakarna Prabhu. Reflection. Thank you, Mataji, for the wonderful class. Problem statement from BG 2.54, answers from BG SBCCNOI. I really like that point that Lord is stitching a cloth, I am the needle. Sometimes I go down, sometimes I go up. One should maintain faith in Krishna through these situations. Then one can see the end result is a beautiful cloth. Perfection of going back home, back to Godhead.
Jai, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Prabhu. That is very, very nice. Yes. End result is that picture, right? That's all we want. I don't mind if he goes in or out. Ashishyava padaratnam pinashtumam adarshanan marmahatam karotva yathattava vidatto lampate matprananata sevanapara. It was so nice to see all of you today on a Wednesday and have a chance to talk to you. I know that I'm troubling you saying, come and answer me and connect with me. But I truly understand what Maharaj is saying when he says, turn on your cameras. I feel really lonely here. You can be in the crowd and still be alone. So it's really nice of you to keep your cameras on and talk to me and share with me. Balram, do we close here or do we do a kirtan or something? What do we do? Can we close?
Whatever you wish, Mataji.
Okay. So then at this point, we will wrap up for the day. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and listening to this Krishna Katha. I hope that it enhances your desire to read the Bhagavad Gita even more. And for those who haven't, for those who like me hesitate to preach the Gita, thinking that maybe they're not, ready enough or qualified enough. The only qualification to share the Gita with others is basically just a desire to spread the message. Do try to spread this. Do a little Sankirtan this week by sharing a little bit of the message with somebody you meet. Thank you so much for listening. Hare Krishna.